Welcome, everyone. It's time for In the Trenches. I'm Eagles insider Dave Spadaro, along with Brian Westbrook, the Hall of Famer. We're looking at the Eagles' defense against the New Orleans Saints on Sunday. Saints only scoring 20 points, Brian. And if you had gone into this game and said, hey, I'll give you 20 points, New Orleans, you feel like the Eagles are going to win the game.
You think so? You think that we would go out there against a team that usually scores 34 points a game at home, and if we can hold them to 20, then we're in a good spot. Unfortunately, with the great start with the interception early, we weren't able to get off the field. That was the biggest thing when I look at this football game for us defensively. We gave up 53% of completions on third down. They're converting 53% of the time, but also they were on the field for almost 38 minutes of the game. That's just not going to be good enough for our defense, and unfortunately it wasn't.
It started absolutely perfectly for the Eagles defense with the cre'von LeBlanc interception on the first play. And then the Eagles, with a four-man pass rush, really getting a lot of pressure on Drew Brees. He looked a little rusty, a little flummoxed, fumbled snap. Brandon Graham gets the strip sack, almost had the recovery, which would have been huge. We talk about Alshon Jeffrey, we talk about the intercept. That would have been a huge play, would have been a dagger for the Saints. And then, Brian, it just seemed like the Saints caught their rhythm. And the Eagles didn't seem to make the necessary, or at least the effective adjustments. I'm sure they adjusted, but it wasn't effective as they wanted it.
The biggest thing, the Saints did catch the rhythm, and I think defensively we became a little soft. We became a little tentative, and there's been a lot of times where you could say, let's blitz and let's get after the quarterback. Obviously, with Drew Brees, seeing the blitz coming and playing man-to-man behind it, it's hard to do that. We saw that in Week 11 just a bit there. But we have to do different things. Where something's not working for us, we have to change. Giving up 18 yards, 14 yards on third and long, that's just not going to be good enough. That's why the Saints converted 8 of 15 on third down. You can't allow that to continue to happen. We gave up way too many third and longs, and unfortunately, those types of things cost us the game.
And the injuries also really affected the defense. Fletcher Cox battling with a foot injury the entire game. Rasul Douglas with an ankle injury, in and out of the lineup. And a defense that has taken so many hits this season, you know, just couldn't sustain the hits the entire game against the best offense in the NFL.
Well, here's a part, and this is an offensive philosophy, but it applies to the defense. With offense, you want to stay on the field to allow your defense to rest just a bit. Because we couldn't stay on the field offensively, our defense was on the field way too long. And against a superb offense that goes out there and scores points with a Hall of Fame type of quarterback, one of the best receivers in the game, and Michael Thomas, it's just hard to continue that on and on and on. And then there was a point defensively where we were on our heels. We were off balance. We didn't know whether it was going to be a pass, a run, a jet sweep. And then when you start playing like that, you can't get off the field on third down. It's all downhill from that point.
Brian, let's take a look at this Eagles defense in a big picture view here. Looking ahead, what are you working with a defense that I think is going to have some significant changes going into 2019?
Well, you have to add some depth to your defensive line. One of the big things coming into this season was the depth at the defensive line. Last year, they had 8 guys that would rotate in, 7, 8 guys that would rotate in, and those guys were just balling. They were getting after the quarterback, doing a lot of different things. This year, I think you kind of shrunk it down to 5 or 6 guys. Not going to be good enough to outlast a lot of teams offensively. So you have to add some depth there. I think you're still looking for some cornerbacks. You have to say, are these young guys going to get healthy? And we had some guys like Maddox and LeBlanc that came out and played well. Rasul Douglas played well. Are these guys going to be your starters? How are you going to handle that cornerback position? You also have to look at what's going to happen with Rodney McLeod, whether he's going to come back healthy. A lot of different questions on the defensive side of the ball. And I think probably one of the bigger questions is Jim Schwartz going to play the same type of philosophy, same type of thought process in the defense? Are we going to not blitz? Are we going to blitz? Are we going to try to take advantage of other teams' offense? If we change some of those things, I think we can be a little bit more successful.
I don't think Jim will change. I think Jim relies on a great defensive front four to generate the pressure and then play coverage behind. So if that's the philosophy, and you've got Brandon Graham, who's scheduled to be a free agent, Chris Long scheduled to be a free agent, Haloti Ngata scheduled to be a free agent, age with Michael Bennett. You've got Jordan Hicks, who's scheduled to be a free agent. You've got Ronald Darby, who's scheduled to be. I mean, there's a lot of questions. But we haven't even talked about the linebackers at all. Nigel Bradham really came on late in the season. Didn't get a whole lot, though, from Hicks on a consistent basis because of the injuries, and also Grugier Hill, Nate Gary, in kind of role players on the weak side.
I think throughout the season, and you see it on both sides of the ball, the injuries have cost us a lot. And then last year, the injuries didn't catch up with us. But this year, we saw guys going in and out of the lineup, just not able to stay in the game. And then you see the second-string guys not playing as well. And listen, part of team play is the second-string guys have to come in and contribute. They have to come in and help your offense or defense. And we didn't get as much help as we did last year, this year from our reserve guys.
Yeah, and there are some young, promising players here. As you mentioned, LeBlanc, who really came on. Cre'von Hester, who made some plays at defensive tackle. Avonte Maddox, who's got the good looks of an inside cornerback, an outside cornerback, or a safety. Jalen Mills, what are you going to do with him next year? Is he going to be a cornerback? Do you think about moving him to another position?
That's right.
So many questions for this Eagles defense. And I still believe this, at the end of the day, even though the top 4 scoring teams are still alive in the NFL playoffs, I believe that along the lines here, a defensive team will step up, a defensive play. The best defense will win the Super Bowl.
Defense, at the beginning of the season, there was no defense played at all. And then as the season went along, the better teams, their defense started to step up. We saw this past weekend, all of the good defense stepped up. Even some of the bad ones. Kansas City defense stepped up just a bit. I think we have to continue to improve. Biggest thing for the offseason is get mentally prepared to win a bunch of games to get home field advantage. We see how the playoffs have gone. We see the big-time advantage that these home teams have. We have to find a way to win enough games to get that home field advantage again.
Yes, sir. Well, that's it. The Eagles will enjoy this break. I mean, after the disappointment of the loss, the Eagles have played a lot of football in the last 2 years. So having an off season where they can rest, recover, come back strong for 2019, so essential for this football franchise. Brian Westbrook, Dave Spadaro, we thank you for joining us in the trenches.